On Unplugged at Stanford today, we are with DocSend, particularly Dave Koslow, who is a Stanford alum, co-founder of DocSend, as well as the Chief Product Officer. So today he's going to tell us a little bit about what DocSend has going on, and he's recruiting too. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Dave, tell us a little bit about you and DocSend.
Perfect. Yeah, so Jeff, thanks a ton for having me on. So a little bit, I could start about DocSend. So really from, and perhaps its most basic way to describe DocSend, we really started from this idea, this question of what would happen if to understand everything that is happening on the viewing side if you send someone something. You send someone a document, you send someone a sales pitch, you send someone your resume. These typically today, in this digital way that we communicate, these files are sent as attachments in email. But typically, as soon as you hit that send button, it's off into the black hole. And you're left wondering, like, what happened with that thing? You know, and think for a moment about, like, you know, a sales pitch that your company is really riding on, a fundraising pitch, right? You're trying to get that first round of funding in. Things that are kind of, you know, these high value transactions, we've kind of unknowingly, unwittingly just opted into this huge black hole of kind of guesswork in our communication. And what DocSend is really here to is kind of help people understand what is happening there. So from its simplest way to describe it, it's you send someone, instead of sending an attachment, you send a DocSend link, and we will tell you whenever anyone opens that link, how much time are they spending page by page, who else are they sending that link to, and then you also get to stay in control. So you can turn off access to that link at any time. You can update a document even after you've sent it, say you made a mistake. And these are all sorts of things that are just not possible with sending attachments. And what we kind of use as our guiding light there is actually all of the things that would have happened in kind of a face-to-face conversation. All of those signals that you would have gotten and all that flexibility that you have to understand who is interested and who's not interested, point by point, and use that to kind of tailor your message on the fly. We can't do that.
Dave, you still there?
Hey, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think we just had a little internet glitch.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Where did I lose you?
You said kind of like traditionally when we send files, it's more like this, but there's certain things you're not able to really do or get from that. And then we froze for just like maybe 10 seconds. So.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, very distilled down, you're able to. So I was describing that the kind of the guiding light for us is face-to-face quality interactions over the digital ways that we communicate today. So that ability to tailor your message on the fly based on all that signal that you're getting, looking around a room, right? We can't look around a room anymore if we're communicating over email or using these.
Okay, I think we're back again. All right, let's see if
I'm so sorry.
It's all good. I think it's just some internet stuff.
Okay.
All right.
Would have been. Yeah. So what I was mentioning is basically trying to restore or bring back that kind of the face-to-face quality interaction to the digital way that we communicate.
Got it. And how about you though? So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah.
I know you graduated in Stanford in 2007. Did your master's there. Course advisor too, so you're even used to giving students advice.
Love it.
Tell us a little bit about your trek from 8 years
Sure.
ago to now.
Sure. So, when I was born in Philadelphia, grew up in South Jersey, and came out to Stanford for Admit Weekend for the first time in 2003, and I just couldn't wipe the grin off my face. I fell in love with the campus. I fell in love with just everything about the school, and I entered fall of freshman year. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to focus on. I thought I might be a writer, perhaps. Or, I was very much interested in computer science, but I wasn't too serious about it. And then I took, CS 106A, that intro course, and it was just, I loved it. And although interestingly, I first declared symbolic systems as my major, and I was really interested in a very multidisciplinary kind of nature to that degree. But actually, after I took CS 107, that's when I realized, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go all in here. I'm going to go all in on computer science. And it was really funny because that whole entirety of freshman year, I was living with this guy, Tony Casanego. It was my randomly paired freshman year roommate in Arroyo. And he is my co-founder at DocSend. He's our CTO here. And we basically spent the entirety of Stanford undergrad attached at the hip, doing all of our computer science work together. And truly in the past 13 years, we've spent about 1 year apart. But other than that, we were either classmates or working together. And then similarly, my other co-founder, Russ, I also met my freshman year in the lair. We were working on I think it was a CS 106B problem set. And it was he just struck me as such a kind fellow. And, I still very clearly remember that first time that I met him. And we ended up living in the same fraternity together over in Theta Delt, and just having a fantastic time. And graduated when I was thinking about what I wanted to do next, because I stayed on for that 5th year as a coterm, CS course advisor, loved it, phenomenal experience. I was looking around at the different opportunities on the table, and I knew, I was talking to Russ at the time, and I knew that he had all these different options on the table when he was graduating, and he decided to go to this company called Greystripe, which is a mobile advertising network. And so that was kind of a bit of a gold star for that company for me. I decided to interview there, and I was like, okay, well, I'll join. So Russ and I, as soon as I got out, I joined Russ in the professional world. And actually about a year later, ended up bringing Tony into Greystripe as well. So all three of us were working there. And we stayed on I was there for just over 4 years, in fact. And about 3 years after I started, the company was acquired by a public company called ValueClick. And that definitely changed a lot of things. But I think it was a wonderful experience to go through, and kind of see the company transform and see how things work in a much bigger company. And so we stayed on for about a year and a half after that. Tony and I were both engineering managers at the time. Russ had left to go to business school over at Harvard. And actually once, Tony and I decided it was time to move on and start our next adventure. I mean, we wanted since the fall of 2003 to start our own business. Like we knew that was something that we wanted to do. And Russ and I had been, even after Russ came back from business school, he was working at Facebook, and we would just catch up every month. And we would just grab dinner at a different place each time in the city, share how things are going, how's life. And we always knew we wanted to work together as well. And so kind of all the forces came together in the fall of 2012. And so Tony and I left Greystripe, and Russ left Facebook, and we decided to roll up our sleeves. And we didn't really have a specific plan in mind at that point. of what the business was going to be. And it took us about 6 months to actually come up upon the idea of DocSend as a business. And in March 2013, so just over 3 years ago, that's when we incorporated.
Got it. And I know right around when we met at the career fair not too long ago, I think it was in TechCrunch, it came out the news that you guys were able to raise about $8 million
Yes.
for DocSend. So what does that mean as students kind of think about you, DocSend as a place to work? $8 million sounds like a great event for you all. What's ahead for DocSend with all that going on?
It's a great question. I feel like the timing ended up working out really, really well, especially with everything that's kind of going on in the macroeconomic climate. So it's really nice to have kind of a little bit of a war chest there that this kind of storm that everyone seems to be talking about is a bit on the horizon. What that really means, though, is that money doesn't really come out of thin air. It means it's a sign, at least from some very smart folks, that there is a business here, and we are, of course, are incredibly excited about the opportunity. And you could kind of look at that as a bit of a de-risker. To a certain extent, and there are startups of all stages, and we're a company of size 16 now, and with a very healthily growing customer base, pretty ecstatic users, and but by the same token, that's still the Series A stage. So we're not siloed out into these sort of like very structured departments or anything like that. Any given team is really, a few people, a handful at most. So what that really means is that there's a ton of opportunity, and it's a really exciting time because, of course, we'll be using that money to grow much more quickly. But it also means that the things that you will be working on, like they will very quickly see the light of day, and also see the light of day and be used by many people right off the bat, as opposed to, say, something that's much more early stage.
So you talk about ecstatic users and being used,
Yeah.
What I'm working on as an engineer or even in sales, like this stuff is going to be put into play pretty quick. So can you give us an example or two of kind of DocSend being used by one of your clients? Like, make this real for us.
Sure, absolutely. Let's see, what would be a good example to share? So one of the let's talk about the sales context. Typically, when there's kind of this kind of information-driven, heavily considered sale, something that's on the line of like, say, there's 10, 20, 30K, 40, 50, 100K and up. There are a lot of kind of documents that come into play because there's a lot of kind of consideration that goes on, and there are a lot of people involved. So one way you might use DocSend today is you have this sort of follow-up call with someone, and there's some interest kind of demonstrated, and it's like, okay, the call was great, thanks for the call, and you send them an email to go follow up. The way you might do that right now is you send off, whatever the material is that you have to convey. So, hey, here's the deck that we walked through. Thanks for your time. And then the black hole begins right there, right? And it's like, okay, now I set a reminder on my clock for like a week to reach back out to you if I haven't heard anything yet. And then I just wait. And so DocSend changes that whole process. Is if that person comes in, say 3 days later, and they're looking at your content, you get an instant email notification as soon as they open up your content. And then you're able to go, kind of dive in and see page by page exactly what they're looking at. And exactly, really, that's a proxy for understanding their interest. So, how that really changes the conversation is, instead of waiting like a week to follow up, you're going to follow up right then, right? Strike while the iron's hot and like build this relationship up. Because if you waited another few days, like, maybe there's a weekend in between, they forget about things, other priorities come up. You've got to kind of keep the conversation moving while you can. But in that conversation, you're going to dive right into the stuff that that person cares about most. So for example, suppose they say you have some pricing that you've circulated to the person. And you see, wow, there's a low tier plan, a medium tier, and a high tier plan. And they spent, a lot of time really thinking about the high tier plan. Well, let's just jump right in and start talking about that. I know that that's something that you really care about. And what ends up happening then is the conversation happens way more efficiently because you're not left guessing, right? Like, what is it that you saw? I don't know if you saw anything. Like, who else was involved? And also, you're able to really kind of just shift that content to the stuff that matters. So rather than repeat yourself from the top, okay, this is the, I'm going to repeat all these 10 points here. Maybe they only really care about a couple of them. And so it's just a much more natural kind of conversation.
Got it. And I guess shifting more toward the recruiting part of our talk, I know you're hiring. So I guess when you think about recruiting and bringing someone else on, you're looking for people that are passionate or really into blank. Like what are you looking for?
Good question. I would say communication. Because when you're there looking for what the next opportunity is, so you're just about to graduate, there are several criteria you can use to evaluate companies. And I think a couple that are really, really important. Who are you working with? So the team, and then the mission of the company. So what is it? What are all these people, gathering in an office and putting all of their brain power to day in and day out? And think for a moment about thinking about this at times. Think for a moment about just a team project that you've had, right? And so you're running on a quarter system, and maybe the team project is 3 weeks at the end of the quarter, and it's like the capstone, right? It's like the essential bit of it. Or say it's even like your senior project, and it's the entirety of a quarter. And just think for a moment how your 3-person team, what you're able to produce in 3 weeks versus like an entire 10-week quarter. And now think, instead of just 3 people, what if that's 20 people and they're super smart, super driven, going down this path? What does that path look like? And do you want to be on it with them? Because, there are plenty of very smart teams out there, but what's actually that mission that they're driving for that is going to really resonate with you, that's going to get you up out of bed when you're a little bit tired, maybe a little stressed out, you've got this tight deadline? What's going to really set that fire inside? And so for us, when I talk about the 5 and 10-year vision, for us, we are really establishing a new form of communication, a new communication medium that's really helping people communicate in this digital world much more like humans. And so, if you think, indulge me for a moment, if you think about the sort of history of technology, communication technology over time, at every single step in the way, we've forfeited intimacy in favor of convenience. So, we went from face to face, then we went to the telephone, right? We just totally dropped all of the sort of all the visual cues for, you can't read anyone's eyes and their facial expression or anything like that. But you can, you focus a lot on their tone of voice. And then, fast forward all the way to email, where we are today, all of those signals are gone. And so all you have at your disposal when you're communicating digitally is capitals. You can bold things, you can underline things, but how can you actually kind of express yourself? And then perhaps even more importantly, how can you understand how any of that's received on the other end? So, I talked a lot about the, replacing attachments piece, but that's really just the beginning. And if we kind of think about our kind of North Star, it's what is, how can we get to face-to-face quality interactions over these digital media? And then even beyond that, can we even do better than that? And I think the answer is undoubtedly yes. And it's really just a matter of how. And so is that something that's interesting to you, right? Is that something that you want to apply a lot of your thought towards? Because it's like, the folks on the team, it expands, right? And the things that we can tackle, the horizons, they go broader and broader. Is that something that's interesting to you?
All right. So you said something that was really interesting that I want to come back to, because I want to make sure for the students watching that want to know.
Let's do it.
What now? I'm like sold. I want to work with Dave.
Great, good choice.
There. So tell me about the roles you're hiring for.
Perfect. So we've got 2 full-time positions that we're hiring for new college grads. So the one is a software engineering position. And the other one is a business development representative role. So 2 very different roles. One's on the engineering side, the other one's on the sales side. And so on the engineering side of things, just to very briefly describe that. So we're all at DocSend, our engineering team. We, as in, I'm on the product side, so sometimes I include myself as in the engineering team. But we're all full stack engineers. And what that really means to you, as someone, as a perspective, as like a candidate at DocSend, is there is a ton to learn. And so when it comes to building a feature, right, being responsible for that front end component and the back end to it, thinking about, everything that needs to happen in order to bring something to life, that I've found to be an incredibly gratifying experience, just in terms of how much can you learn in a very short period of time, and then be able to have that exposure and then bring that stuff into life yourself. Say if you want to start a business of your own someday. So that's what the engineering position looks like. And then on the sales side, the business development representative, that's a really interesting one for us, which really, there's no particular degree requirement for it. It's really, do you like talking to people? Do you like, having conversations and getting people excited about DocSend? And then really having, generating those opportunities for, our account executives to have that next conversation. And push the deal forward.
Awesome. And what would be the best way for students to apply or get on your radar for those roles?
So you can just send us a message. We're not too formal. You can just shoot us a message at jobs@docsend.com. Or if you want to email me directly, that's also totally cool. I'm just dave@docsend.com. But we also posted both of those positions on Handshake. And so I think what we can do after is I'll get you those 2 links. Then does that work well for circulating those?
It does, exactly. I mean, this is
perfect.
This is what students often won't get, is there's a few ways in to getting on the radar. So I think you just gave them it all.
Oh yeah. Totally. Sometimes people ask us, like, what's your process look like? It's like, well, you send us an email and then we will read it. It's not just drop it off into this big amorphous cabinet of nowhere.
So putting that CS course advisor hat back on for a moment. You mentioned, kind of as you were explaining the engineer role, like, if you wanted to start your own business, that was a word you used, and I'm just thinking for students out there, because your co-founding story is really interesting. You all met on campus in the same major, maybe just living in the same spot. So for current students that are like, I don't know, maybe I want to start my own business one day, have my own startup. Are there any things that when you look back, like, man, it was these elements in the people that were around me that I didn't notice it, but those were the elements that meant these 2 guys were going to be great co-founders, great partners down the road. So students can kind of be looking out for that now.
Oh, good question. I would say probably the number one is having the same work ethic. So, are you guys going to both be there, or the 3 of you, rolling up your sleeves, putting in the late night hours, to really bring your dream into reality. Do you have the same work styles? And it's okay if you don't. For example, someone might be remote part-time or something like that. Are you okay with that? And I think just, whatever those sorts of questions are. But I think really first and foremost, it would be work ethic. And then the second thing would just be trust. One of the things that kind of comes up from time to time, and especially in a startup context, is what is it that you can do that someone else just doesn't have to worry about? So like, say you have an idea, right? And this is something that's because everyone is sort of, everyone's kind of up to their eyes, I would say, in terms of like the stuff that we could be doing at any given point in time. Where we really start to get inefficient, though, is one person checking another person's work, checking another person's work. And so can you build up that trust where you're like, you know what? I really trust, her sense. I think that this is going to be a wonderful decision, and let's, I don't even need to review it. And that sort of trust is something that you can really get to. I would definitely, if you have these people in your circle now, like spend as much time as you can with them. Start building that, keep building it, because it's just gold.
And I guess my last question, we're coming up around half an hour here. You mentioned, I think we were talking about who you're looking for, and it was something like, you're looking for people that are giddy about something. And I remember you talking about being giddy. And then
communication.
There you go. Yes, being giddy about communication. So, and then when you went in to kind of talking more about that, I could see that you're clearly giddy and really into the stuff that you're working on. So what's your advice to students so that during their time at Stanford, they could make sure they find something, they run into something they're giddy about? What's your advice there?
I think that probably the best thing to do is have just a variety of experiences, diversity of experiences. So one thing that I always love to recommend is, if you can go abroad, right, just do it. Maybe that means, like, for example, for me, when it came time to go abroad, Stanford didn't have a program in Spain. I wanted to be in Spain. They do have one now, thankfully, awesome. But I really wanted to be in Barcelona, and I went to the registrar's office before, when it was starting, before I left, and I was like, these are all the courses I could take. Can I get any credit for any of them? The registrar said no, and I was like, oh, okay. So effectively, it was a bit of a quarter off. But truly, that diversity of experiences to try to you can't really perfectly quantify it. But the way that kind of expands your mind, I think that's just, it's just priceless.
Dave, this has been great. Thank you for the time today. Students will be applying that are interested, and let's not let this be the last time. Let's get DocSend back on campus this next season too.
Oh, we'll definitely be there.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thanks all for watching. See you next time.